Since the 2016 presidential election, more and more Americans have grown skeptical regarding the accuracy of political polling numbers and their actual ability to predict election results. We turn to communication professor Dr. Self and political science student Jackson Elder to hear what they think.
It's hard to say at this point. I mean, really, political polling's reputation is on the line this year. You're right. In 2016, there was a polling error, but if you looked at people like Nate Silver on 538, what he was saying is instead of saying it's Clinton's leading, Clinton's losing, or Trump's leading or Trump's losing, what he was saying is there an X percentage chance that Clinton could win, and there's an X percentage chance that Trump could win. And that's probably a better way to do that. The thing to keep in mind is that all polling is a snapshot in time. And it depends on how many people you talk to. Does your sampling match? Things like that. And that's become more difficult to do in recent years. The bias in media isn't liberal or conservative. Surely there are outlets that are more liberal and more conservative, right? If you want a conservative viewpoint, you go to Fox News. If you want a liberal one, you go to MSNBC. But by and large, mainstream media its bias isn't political, its bias is corporate, because it has to make money. So I can be more sensational, or I can really hype up conflict, or I can talk about issues that people want to hear much more about, even though maybe they're not as important as some of these other things that we need to talk about. Those are ways that we get viewers or subscribers or clicks, is to make sure that we get people on there to give them what they want rather than sometimes what they need.
The media in this election cycle is obviously very aware. 2016 was a spotlight situation to where we got to understand a lot of where the media was and what improvements it really needed to make. A lot of the polling data especially didn't account for certain factors, changes in the electorate that a lot of polling sites didn't account for, whether that be the increase in college-educated voters voting for Democrats and less educated voters turning toward Republicans, something that wasn't evident in 2012. But going further on the media line, media outlets didn't quite know how to report all of these different skewed polls, how all this new incoming data, especially with the events that occurred in October just before the election and on election day. I think a lot of outlets, especially in 2020, had become more cognizant of that. They're understanding how to look at polls. They're looking at multiple different kinds, different audiences, representation, samples. And I think that makes the polls in 2020 more carefully eyed. In terms of disinformation, obviously, it's very hard for anyone to really understand where certain aspects are going to come from. That just is up to election security and how well media vet their sources. But I think in terms of a comparison to 2016, we're definitely doing a better job.
For some Truman students, this is the second or even first presidential election they've had the opportunity to vote in. While COVID-19 conditions made it difficult to vote in person, every student's vote still makes an impact.
I would say your vote always matters. It's even if you think it's not going to affect the outcome of the race, it's still important to have your voice heard, right? One of the things that political scientists or political pundits talk about is, does a candidate have a mandate? So not only does your candidate win, but also by how much. And if it's a huge margin, then you talk about, well, they really have a mandate then to do what it is they campaigned on, because so many people voted for that. It's just a part of the process, and you've got to be a part of the process. I'm just a firm believer in that. Every 4 years, we hear the argument, this is the most important election of our lifetime. And I would agree with that in the sense that every election, the most recent election, the current election, is the most important one. But I mean, really, it depends on what motivates you. Are the issues that are on the ballot, the things that are being discussed at the presidential level, at the state level, even at the local level, are those important issues to you? If they are, then yeah, it's a pretty damn important election.
Historically, we've been told that we don't matter, but this election seems to indicate that we're mattering more than ever. Young voters have always been something that candidates have been trying to get after, but not often do we turn out. Voting in this election, whether it be by small margins or big margins, all matters. This is our biggest chance to influence any election in history. If we don't get out and vote, someone else is, whether it be for our opinion or against it. We want to make sure that for our ideas, our democracy, and the basic ways that we're going to keep up this nation, because we are what's coming next. We are the generation that comes up.